last 2 centuries. "On that score, Mr. Counselor, we can only conjecture," the commander said. "The outward voyage may have required as much as 50 or 60 years. After that there must have followed a lengthy period of development and expansion in building the new world. It is not to be expected that the pioneers will be ready to expend resources in expeditionary ventures for some time." "I do not completely understand your apparent confidence in the ability of the hypothetical Omega culture to supply massive aid to us, even if its people should be so inclined," said a straight-backed woman member. "The time seems very short for the mastery of an alien world." "The population development plan, madam, provided for an increase from the original 10,000 colonists to approximately 40,000 within 20 years, after which the rate of increase would of course rapidly grow. Assuming 60 years for planetfall, the population should now number over 160 millions. Given population, all else follows." 2 hours later, the World Secretary summed up. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have the facts before us. There still exist differences in interpretation, which, however, will not be resolved by continued repetition. I now call for a vote on the resolution proposed by the military member and presented by Commander Greylorn." There was silence in the council chamber as the votes were recorded and tabulated. Then the World Secretary sighed softly. "Commander," he said, "the Council has approved the resolution. I'm sure that there will be general agreement that you will be placed at the head of the project, since you were director of the team which developed the new drive, and are also the author of the plan. I wish you the best of luck." He rose and extended his hand. The first keel plate of the armed courier vessel Galahad was laid 32 hours later. Chapter 1. I expected trouble when I left the bridge. The tension that had been building for many weeks was ready for release in violence. The ship was silent as I moved along the passageway. Oddly silent, I thought. Something was brewing. I stopped before the door of my cabin, listening. Then I put my ear to the wall. I caught the faintest of sounds from within. A muffled click. Voices. Someone was inside. Someone attempting to be very quiet. I was not overly surprised. Sooner or later the trouble had to come into the open. I looked up the passage, dim in the green glow of the night lights. There was no one in sight. I listened. There were 3 voices, too faint to identify. The clever thing for me to do now would be to walk back up to the bridge and order the provost marshal to clear my cabin, but I had an intuitive feeling that that was not the way to handle the situation. It would make things much simpler all around if I could push through this with as little commotion as possible. There was no point in waiting. I took out my key and placed it soundlessly in the lock. As the door slid back I stepped briskly into the room. Kramer, the medical officer, and Joyce, assistant communications officer, stood awkwardly, surprised. Fine, the supply officer, was sprawled on my bunk. He sat up quickly. They were a choice selection. 2 of them were wearing sidearms. I wondered if they were ready to use them, or if they knew just how far they were prepared to go. My task would be to keep them from finding out. I avoided looking surprised. "Good evening, gentlemen," I said cheerfully. I stepped to the liquor cabinet, opened it, poured scotch into a glass. "Join me in a drink?" I said. None of them answered. I sat down. I had to move just a little faster than they did, and by holding the initiative, keep them off balance. They had counted on hearing my approach, having a few moments to get set, and using my surprise against me. I had reversed their play and taken the advantage. How long I could keep it depended on how well I played my few cards. I plunged ahead, as I saw Kramer take a breath and wrinkle his brow, about to make his pitch. "The men need a change, a break in the monotony," I said. "I've been considering a number of possibilities." I fixed my eyes on Fine as I talked. He sat stiffly on the edge of my bunk. Already he was regretting his boldness in presuming to rumple the captain's bed. "It might be a good bit of drill to set up a few live missile runs on random targets," I said. "There's also the possibility of setting up a small arms range and qualifying all hands." I switched my eyes to Kramer. Fine was sorry he'd come, and Joyce wouldn't take the initiative. Kramer was my problem. "I see you have your Mark 9, Major," I said, holding out my hand. "May I see it?" I smiled pleasantly. I hoped I had hit him quickly and smoothly enough before he had had time to adjust to the situation. Even for a hard operator like Kramer, it took mental preparation to openly defy his commander, particularly in casual conversation. But possession of the weapon was more than casual. I looked at him, smiling, my hand held out. He wasn't ready. He pulled the pistol from its case, handed it to me. I flipped the chamber open, glanced at the charge indicator, checked the action. "Nice weapon," I said. I laid it on the open bar at my right. Joyce opened his mouth to speak. I cut in the same firm, snappy tone I used on the bridge. "Let me see yours, Lieutenant." He flushed, looked at Kramer, then passed the pistol over without a word. I took it, turned it over thoughtfully, and then rose, holding it negligently by the grip. "Now, if you gentlemen don't mind, I have a few things to attend to." I was not smiling. I looked at Kramer with expressionless eyes. "I think we'd better keep our little chat confidential for the present. I think I can promise you action in the near future, though." They filed out, looking as foolish as three preachers caught in a raid on a brothel. I stood without moving until the door closed. Then I let my breath out. I sat down and finished off the Scotch in one drag. "You were lucky, boy," I said aloud. "3 gutless wonders." End of section.